All right, there we go. That was the last presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a little bit of a Frankenstein work for me. Usually I do a little bit more of a cleaner job on the editing, but I had to pull it together. I had to get something out there for you guys. Oh, look at here. We got Will and we got I thought you were going to bed, Logan.
Yeah, me too.
He was trolling us.
Will just shot me a text and I was like, all right.
Let's do it. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us, man.
Fantastic presentation, brother. That was incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Epic,
yeah,
dude.
I appreciate
loved it.
that. Yeah, the last part, I could have just taken the whole last part of it and just made that the presentation, which would have been fine, honestly. Just did something just completely on the Arthurian legend. And yeah, well, I appreciate that. I hope you guys gained something from a little bit of that. I really like the Green Knight allegory. I think that's a very powerful allegory in the movie. I know somebody mentioned it in the comments as well. The cinematography in the movie and cinema language is just top tier. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie, but it's pretty new. I think it came out in the past couple years, but I would highly recommend watching that movie. It's just so profound, not only just the cinematography, but the whole story of the Green Knight.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Fascinating.
Anybody else joining us? Is it just us?
I was just about to ask that.
I think Corey said he wanted to join.
Everyone else is all.
Yeah, no, I mean, we should get Tyler in here. Tyler, get in here.
Yeah, hop in, Tyler.
Nathan, where you at? Where you at, Nathan?
Freedom Team, assemble!
That's what's up. So what'd you guys think about the conference?
Oh, man. Just absolutely nailed it as far as I'm concerned. It was just smooth as butter. Every single, presentation just brought the A game. A good diverse spread of different topics, making that tapestry of knowledge and information. I just loved every second of it, man, all the way through.
Likewise, I can totally second that, man. I love these conferences that have overlap. You can see people's different topics kind of correlate. It's fantastic.
Look at this. We got Dylan up in here. Damn.
What's up, brother?
What's up, man?
How's it going, guys?
Good.
Going good. Welcome to the Roundtable. I didn't know you were joining. Thanks for joining up with us, man.
Yep.
Awesome. So what were you saying, Will? What was your...
No, just the overlap from everyone's presentations, the synchronicities on these topics. Logan, you said something in your presentation. It's there's many pathways to truth, and we can see that even in this conference when people are touching on different topics and categories, yet we see the overlap in other people's presentations. And something I like to observe. We saw that in the funnel conference as well. It's something that's, beautiful. Kind of, it ties everything together.
That's the syncretism, man.
Yep,
is
exactly.
That all paths lead to truth. And that's something I really tried to stress in mine, was that fuck this gatekeeping nonsense of our way is the only way. If you want to get to truth, you have to, put yourself in this box and slap a label on it. And yeah, it's just, that's not the way, dude. Truth is there. It's readily available and discoverable to every being.
Absolutely. Do you have what do you think about the conference, Dylan? How'd you feel about it?
Man, I thought it was great. To be honest, there's so much density in a lot of the presentations that I know I didn't absorb all of it watching things. I'm going to have to go back and devote one day to each presentation that I really want to pick apart. But it is, I noticed this the previous year that I did this. It's amazing having so many people from different perspectives, different angles, basically all describing the same thing in their respective fashion.
Exactly.
It's like that meme with the different light beams pointed at the cube or the conical, or it's like a cylindrical shape, and it says this is true, and this is truth. It's like each person is kind of beaming their own light at the truth and casting the shadow.
That's right. Welcome, Nathan.
Angles of truth, right? Perspectives. That was actually sorry to interrupt. That's great advice. That what you said about going back and revisiting the conference and take each presentation and spend some time on it to absorb it, integrate that information, contemplate on it, and then move on. I mean, 18 hours yesterday, and we're going on 15 hours today. It's like,
yeah, you can
that's
throw a wet
lot of
paper
knowledge.
towel on a puddle of water, and it's not going to do much. Like you've already kind of absorbed as much as you can in that session.
Yep, that is absolutely true. I know just about maybe a couple presentations ago, I was like, I don't even know if I'm taking this in at this point, you know? I'm just like, oh man, this is so good, but I'm definitely gonna have to rewatch a lot of your guys' work because I know it was very astounding. I really enjoyed yours, Dylan. You brought some good humor to the table. I enjoyed yours. Of course, I enjoyed all your guys's, obviously. I liked what Will brought to the table with initiation. I think that's really important. It correlated to a little bit of mine at the beginning, so I thought that was amazing. And you know, getting out of the boxes, obviously, that's a really, really good you know, concept that a lot of people overlook. And yeah, I just think it was really good all around. And we had great chats. You know, we had some humor going. We had we had trolls. We had everybody getting in here, right? Yeah, I heard some little glitchiness there. I don't know. Is that coming from an echo? I think from somebody. Might be Nathan over here with he's the echo master. This
The echo chamber.
echo chamber. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, we don't want to make this an echo chamber, right? But no matter what, like the work is always going to lead you back to the truth. And when you're talking about foundational principles like we are, which is the main thing that we're trying to teach people, we're obviously going to be overlapping a lot with a lot of these things. So I think that was great. Leslie Powers brought in a lot of stuff about the hero mythos, talked about the Grail, and that overlapped with a lot of my Arthurian stuff. Nathan talked about Freemasonry and the Osiris mythos, which overlapped with some of my stuff, and I saw a couple other people talking about that. So I just think that kind of synchronicity just shows how powerful this message is, and it also shows that this is based upon an objective truth in reality, you know, because we have many people, pun intended, here at the Knights of the Round Table, you know, to see different angles, like you're talking about, different angles to get the actual truth, because we all can't have absolute knowledge about objective truth, the totality of objective truth. We have to come at that from all different angles to be able to see that, and that's why this is really important to have so many people like yourselves to work on this.
Yeah, I really liked the chat. Was just always good vibes. You know, lots of people were participating. Didn't really see any drama breakout, unlike with Funnel 3. There was a little bit of that here and there. But yeah, I mean, overall, really good vibes. Even, you know, some people with some different perspectives. A couple people touched on like veganism versus not, and they're really, it didn't start any flame wars or anything. That's pretty nice. You know, it's just like, you know, just let it be. You know, people can speak their piece, and you don't have to feel like personally attacked by it.
Right. Yeah, I think that was really good. I was expecting a bit more volatility in the comments, actually, but that didn't happen. So I was very happy about that. Though a little volatility can add a little bit of a spunk into a system, you know, or into a group, you know, get people a little riled up a little bit, kind of stir the pot a little bit. You need a couple Discordians in your group, you know, they'll make you grow. So don't think that we all need to be like uniform without Discordian. We do need a little bit of Discordianism in our groups because it allows us to not only reflect upon that, but sometimes they will inspire great growth. That's why Dylan's presentation was really good, because there was a little bit of that, you know, that kind of snarky humor that comes out, and that's a good thing to have. We don't want to lose any of that stuff, as long as you're humble enough to be able to do those things, obviously, and you're not being super egotistical or militant, you know, with your ideology.
Great point.
Yes.
Chaos has a very important place in the universe. You know, I think it's a lot of people get in this very kind of black and white, almost I think a lot of it comes from kind of the Christian programming, and then New Age is just that, but repackaged, rebranded, the same kind of mindset of just like love and light, and everything's just nice and peaceful. And being a pagan, I kind of welcome that little bit of chaos and see that every element of nature has its place and it's all serving, in some kind of way, and you can embrace that and transmute it, leverage that
Absolutely.
pushback is going to cause you to kind of think again, and like
Mhm.
really analyze and take a good look at, to respect your own beliefs. You know what I mean?
Right. It's kind of the Loki energy in a way, and we do
Yeah.
have to realize that Hermes is also called the trickster. Thoth is the trickster as well, and we do need a little bit of that, and it does correlate to not only the Hermit card but also the Fool's card. And I always say that you cannot, if you embrace yourself and you really love yourself, then you have to love those parts of yourself as well, being the Fool. And you just have to know the time and place to implement the Fool, right? And be wise about how you're implementing that, or what I call the child spirit.
Right. And you brought up the trick. I kind of like that because it pulls me out of my comfort zone. And, we get stuck in agency, we get stuck in comfort. But, when you get pulled out of that, then that means that there's room for growth. And that's one thing that I liked about, how Dylan's presentation, like sometimes I can get, rigid and, get stuck to where I'm laughing. But sometimes we do need that laughter. Sometimes we do need to open up, and we need that kind of trickster to kind of pull that chaos, like into the mix, kind of change things up, how like Logan did so beautifully. And I thank you for that. And I thank, all of y'all, because y'all encouraged me to step up game. And, it was an amazing conference, and it was a honor to be among all of you great, wonderful individuals. So I thank all of the individuals who participated in the chat. And thanks to Tyler and everyone behind the scenes.
Yeah, we got to give a big shout out to Tyler. He's been working his ass off. Look, he's in here right now with us. He literally is the engineer of all of this. So everybody should give a super big thank you to that guy, because without him, we wouldn't have been able to run such a smooth operation. And he also helped do the SEED5 conference. And if you can support him in any way, I definitely recommend that. And also, by the way, we're not calling you the trickster necessarily, Dylan. So don't get all butthurt about that.
I'll take it.
You're fine with it. You accept that with a badge of honor. You're like, yes.
I'll pin it on my jester hat. Totally into that.
You got the mustache you can twirl like this.
Yeah, I mean, I do look like I should be tying women down a railroad tracks. It definitely lends to that
right.
trope.
Yes. Indeed. Where's your lasso? You need one of those too. Oh my gosh. So what do you guys want to talk about here? We do have a couple questions. I guess we could shoot for the questions real quick. This one's going to be a little bit of a difficult question for all you guys, I feel. But maybe it's, it depends on how you feel about these things. But I'll throw it on the screen if anybody wants to take that question from Wake of the Truth. How would land ownership work under a voluntarist system, particularly when most of the land is already claimed, however unjustly? So if anybody wants to approach that, I mean, I can give my answer if you guys want me to give my answer, but I'd like to hear what you guys are, where you're at with property. I really do want to see where you guys are at, because freedom, fundamentally, without understanding what property is, you're not really going to understand how freedom actually works. And property can be very ambiguous, and it's a very touchy topic, especially when you get into things like this, right? So
it's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's questions like these that kind of pop up once in a while, and it's open for solutions, right? We're not going to have all the answers. I mean, we're talking about a true free voluntary society. This is going to be an elevated level of consciousness. We're going to have to, organize and cooperate and work together on a lot of these type of topics. But of course, it comes down to property rights. And let's say we just take government out of the equation, you know, the entities that are actually claiming the land unjustly. Yeah, it's going to have to be, I mean, everything's got to come down to the local level in your actual community, in your neighborhood, or whatever area that you are moving to or where you live. And there's got to be discourse amongst the people. So there's got to be some type of communication. So I don't know if the question is, you know, contracts. There's nothing wrong with contracts. So
Yeah, as long as they're voluntary. I
Sure.
think that the presupposition here is that if you're in a voluntarist system, then obviously most of that land would already be probably being used for the good. And since if you take out government or the state at this level, then they obviously create artificial scarcity with land by buying up a lot of the land. And by doing that, there's going to be a lot more availability and opportunity to have more land for people. And I think that's also kind of the scarcity mindset. People think, oh, they own all this land, so we can't use it, blah, 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 blah. You know, what's going to happen when, you know, one person owns so much? And yeah, one person shouldn't be able to own, let's say, all of the water in the world, right? I mean, that is the truth. You should only need to have possession of enough that take care of yourself or your family or whatever community that you're in, if you're organizing with a community for that specific resource, obviously. And let's just say if it's unjustly held, then you have the right to take it back. You know, that's just the fucking truth. You know, you can take that shit back if it's unjustly maintained and held. That's the point of it being unjust. Restitution, you know, take it back and get restitution for it. That's what I say.
Exactly.
But, you know,
I see a common factor when people are, you know, they're contemplating what a voluntary society would look like, you know, true freedom. They imagine how we're living now, and they just try to interchange to a society of true freedom. Like, there's going to be a lot of things that would have to change and that would change, right? So, I mean, cities is a great example. I mean, people packed in these high condensed cities. I think that would ultimately somewhat dissipate, meaning people would move out to the open areas, because there's a lot of land. There's plenty of land to go around for a lot of people. But it's just a way of life. It keeps people packed in here like sardines in these cities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anybody else want to talk on that?
I'll say that a really great resource, someone who I've enjoyed listening to talk about things like property ownership, and he's a voluntarist. I think he calls himself an anarcho-capitalist, which, you know, I'm fine with. I do like that ANCAPs use black and yellow, because I think like 50% of them just don't want to be associated with communists, and the other 50% are actually the guys that are like Randian egotists that you do have to worry about selling the child. But that aside, Hoppe talks about the way that you can facilitate even things like public or group ownership using a private proprietarian system. And then to Brandon's point, yeah, I mean, to the extent that something is unjustly held, there does have to be some form of restitution there, some form of correcting that. And I don't necessarily know what that looks like. It's probably really chaotic and cataclysmic, but like, you know, chaos does bring about its own type of order. And the growing pains that we'll experience moving towards a just society, I think it's like, you know, maybe not the best comparison, because it's comes out of the medical system, but the way that we fight cancer, it's brutal on the body to excise cancer from yourself, but it's also necessary to keep you from dying.
Right. Well said. Yes, there's all kinds of growing pains. Let's say trying to build muscles. You know, you're gonna have to rip your muscles, and then you have to heal from that, and it's gonna be painful. Cancer is a really good example of that kind of healing process. Does anybody else have any takes on property when it comes to that? I know this is a difficult topic.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about property, it's, you know, one of those kind of check marks is it being used? You know what I mean? Are you the rightful, like, did you rightfully attain it? And are you actually using it? And are you willing to defend it? You know, if somebody's willing to actually forcefully try to take it, are you willing to stop them? And yes, that could definitely get kind of messy, right? You know, we're drawing, you know, people talk about the arbitrary lines of government. You're still kind of doing that when you're aligned, you know, when you're talking about just private land ownership and that sort of thing. Is like anything past that tree, you know, is not, but anything on this side is my property. You just kind of decided that. But definitely, I think it gets even more tricky when you get into the realm of like the communal aspect. So one thing I always kind of like, an example that I go to is something like the pyramids, you know, because it's a historical artifact. It's like no one owns it, yet everyone owns it because it's a piece of history, and we all should be like kind of the stewards of it to make sure that no shitheads are like spray painting it or defacing it or anything like that. So that would be where we would all kind of like be responsible for stewarding that collectively, where no one person has the say of, oh, we're going to tear it down and build a shopping mall or something, but you know, everyone kind of has a say in the matter. So that's definitely the whole domain of public or communal property definitely gets a lot more tricky and nuanced, because when you're talking about individual stuff, it's pretty nice and clean. It's like, I own myself, you own yourself, I own my stuff, you own your stuff. But when it's like city streets and, you know, things along those lines, that's where it gets a lot more tricky.
Absolutely.
The thing to remember though is just as much as it's tricky for us as just like regular people to figure this out, it's literally no different when the government does it. They just have the force to enforce whatever their say goes, but they're just as fallible as us, and they could make a bad call or a bad judgment just as easily as people getting together literally like we're doing right now and saying, well, you know, this is what we'll do or whatever. So, you know,
Right.
it's important to destigmatize this magical idea that if we have this centralized authority, somehow all the decisions will be super good and nice and clean and tidy, because in fact, when you give people that power, it tends to go the opposite way.
Yeah, I think we overcomplicate the problem as well sometimes. And my point to that is that a lot of people would just have an ego attachment to, let's say, like the public roads, right? Or something like this. And somebody else comes in and starts maintaining them. Well, I don't think anybody's going to really complain if somebody else comes in and starts maintaining the roads that you're claiming that you own, right? Especially if they're going to be using those motherfucking roads, right? So I think that a lot of these issues will diminish when we do have a more volunteerist ideology coming about. It doesn't mean that we won't have some kind of conflict of interest when it comes to property at the bigger level of that. But I think that that will kind of level out eventually once we start to understand how that society will actually function beyond just our personal private domains and private spaces within our communities or our homes and things like that, because those, like you said, are the easiest things to deal with.
And I don't think anyone here thinks like the Bureau of Land Management is actually doing a good job. like it functions because there's a monopoly on violence and they get to go point automatic weapons at farmers and stuff, but like they're not doing a good job. I would be interested to hear others' takes on this, but I do think that I think that probably the use of land as purely a financial asset would probably need to disappear over time. I don't know if I want to like use force to get that done, but I also don't see how the way that land is bought and sold by people who have no physical relationship to it whatsoever could possibly be compatible with a natural law society.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting, because what that brings up for me is this is like an area where culture can actually be a good thing, where when there's a culture of morality, principles, good land stewardship, right, taking care of the earth, at some point, you know, force isn't even necessary at a certain point, because people just they're more worried about the social stigma that comes along with doing something. They're like, it's kind of icky, right? And there'll still be always those fringe people that just do whatever they want, but then they can be ostracized, and they're going to run into hardships in other ways trying to strike deals with people and do commerce and all the you're the guy that's like taking up all the land and building or doing lavender fields or something like that.
Like, would you sell your property to the BlackRock guy? Probably not.
No. No, not at all. Yeah, I
Great
think
point.
this is where a lot of Marxists and communists and socialists would obviously disagree with anything that we have to say. That's pretty obvious, and we already know where that leads us to when it
Rent
comes
is
to
theft.
I'd be
Yes.
interested to hear where
Uh,
Wake of Truth is coming at from with that question. That person has been trying to get it into the chat basically the entire weekend, and we just so happened not to get to it. It wasn't for any reason, but I'd be interested to know, are they trying to hit a stinger there? Like, what is the question coming from? Because it seems like it's sort of mixing, statist philosophy with voluntarist utopianism, and then trying to see how those two would overlap, and they really don't. So I don't know if the question is trying to poke a hole in voluntarism, or is it trying to just address the question? Is it more black and white than that? I don't know. So the context of that question would be nice too.
that would be
he
nice.
did make a statement saying that he would, for clarification, he was thinking in terms of the transition from where we are now. So like a transitional phase.
Yeah, the transition will be very ugly. That's, there's no doubt in my mind. Even when you look at, say, some of the things Abraham Lincoln said about the abolishment of actual chattel slavery, was that they were going to die like in droves for 100 years before they basically deinstitutionalized and learned skills and learned how to be free people. That's a great microcosm of what this would be like on a global scale, moving out of the government slavery system.
Are you guys at all familiar with tort liability? Any of you guys? Kinda?
No.
Okay, Dylan has a little bit.
Not well enough to start talking about it.
Okay. All right. Well, shit. I think it does apply here, though. Tort liability is pretty much being able to hold, let's say, like corporations liable for unethical procedures based upon, natural law. Since we're going to be a natural law society, I would say that's what it should be based upon. Some sort of consistent moral, code, and we would call that objective morality. But it means that you can hold them liable for, let's say like the wrongful possession of land, for example. And that's a big issue that we have currently in our society, which is that we have very limited tort liability when it comes to the kind of system that we have, where they can just pay their way out of any kind of fine. Most of these corporations, obviously, they can just be like, oh, I can just account for this into my net profit, and be like, okay, yeah, this time I can dump into the river as much as I want, and it's like, I'll just get a fine this year and then pay it off and I'll be able to get away with it. And unless I get like some kind of huge lawsuit or something like, DuPont, and DuPont's still around. I mean, think about that, right? It's like, oh yeah. So they can just continuously get away with these things because they're not held liable for the kind of damages they're doing onto citizens. Or individuals, I should say.
Yeah, fine is only deterrent if you can't afford it. Otherwise,
Right.
You're just like, cool, it's just the price I pay for doing the thing, as opposed to actually people stopping you from that.
Right. It's mainly for the poor. That's mainly what it's for. Right. It's not really there for the rich. The rich don't fucking give a shit about that. Not that there's anything wrong with being wealthy. I think that's a dogmatic position to say, oh, since you're wealthy, you must be immoral. And we talked about that quite a bit. So what else? What would you guys like to bring to the table? Look at these great minds. What do you guys want to talk about tonight?
I actually want to second kind of roll back to that last question because I like what Dylan talked about is, removing the financial aspect, and what Logan said about culture. I see culture as being completely neutral. It's more of a representation of collective consciousness because we're going to interact, and there's going to be aspects of the interaction that we got to pop up that that shine from the characteristics of the level of consciousness that we're at. And this is going to take generations to probably transition into, once the higher consciousness starts getting out to more people, right? So what Dylan said about growing pains, pain in general in nature it's inevitable. Like, it's a part of nature, pain is, but suffering is a choice. I mean, even the definition of suffering, it implies consent. You're choosing suffering. This is when pain gets too overwhelming and it becomes suffering. So I think there's going to be people that are absolutely going to die from these transitions because they will not go through that inner work, and they're going to be clutching to these fading and decaying belief systems and ideologies, and they're just not simply going to make it. So the transition itself in any category, number one, obviously, is going to be consciousness. Once consciousness starts expanding and elevating, that will turn into a moral culture because we're cultivating higher awareness and morality. And then, from there, then the systems are going to start to integrate and kind of pop up. And the people that are not integrating and becoming moral are most likely going to have a hard time with it and not survive. So, I mean, to someone outside, that sounds brutal, but we're talking about objective morality. So there is truth. There is a correct answer. That's kind of the difference.
It's brutal if you look at it that way, but it really just is what it is. People are suffering already under the system that we're under now. I've heard it said that change comes about when the pain of change becomes more appealing than the change of staying the same, or the pain of staying the same. And that's where we're fast approaching that point where it's just like, this is unsustainable, and even though it may have to get worse before it gets better, it's kind of like if you've got a bullet lodged in you, it might hurt worse when you start digging in there, but if you just leave it where it's at, you're going to die anyways. So you have to just kind of, move through that pain to get to the other side of it into something where you can actually start healing.
It has to hurt if it is to heal.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was from Never Ending Story.
And change has to come. Like, it has to come. It's going to come. It's just a matter of time. Like, it has to come. So yeah, there's going to be some growing pain. There's going to be a lot of things that people aren't going to want to adjust to. Not going to want to adapt to because people aren't really as adaptive, as they should be. Want to stay stuck in their old ways. Yeah, that change has to come. And how we prefer it to come in the realm of consciousness, but honestly, I really don't care how we get to it as long as we get to it.
It's almost like the trolley allegory that people like to bring up when it comes to moral decisions or whatever. It's like the train is moving towards people on the tracks, and you didn't do that. You didn't put them there physically. So even if you did nothing, it was already on a trajectory of destruction. And then you have the choice to either act or not act, and you veer it the other way. And yes, maybe people are still going to get hurt, but you change the trajectory of it. That's, does that make sense where I'm going with that?
Yeah. Well, it's a deontological approach. That by de facto, you are in a position that you could possibly reduce harm or coercion in a situation like that. And so you do what you can to actually do that. And when we allow fear to prevent us from making that choice because we're worried it's going to hurt other people or there's going to be consequences or collateral, right? That's usually when more people get harmed. That's why we have the state currently, We have another question here, actually. And I know these ones are actually different questions than I expected. If government, I know how you guys are going to answer this already. If government became the service it was meant to be, would you pay only spending tax only? Worded a little weird, but yeah. What I would say to that is government is exactly what it's meant to be currently. Okay,
Yeah.
it is exactly what it's meant to be. So it
Yeah.
can never be anything else.
The system is not broken. It's functioning exactly as it was
It's working
designed.
fine. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with the things we talk about because they do have some sense of empathy towards harm to other people, and they do want to minimize that, but they take it to the extreme of like so much protection that they don't realize that what they're doing is actually creating the harm that they're trying to avoid. Right. So that's the issue. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy by doing that. It's just like the idea of taking the guns away from people, you know. No, buy more guns, buy more ammo. You're going to need it. You're in a position right now where you are under duress and you do need these self-defense items, whether that's just to protect your own home from a criminal or something like this, or the actual big criminals, which is the government, who are really the ones perpetrating all the crimes currently. So
I've got a question that's kind of similar to what Angela is asking. If we were in a society, or we made this change in consciousness, if we were to like have like a council or something like that, could we call it government? Because a lot of people still use that the term government and in like the wrong context, when you're talking about freedom, because we're talking about a form of mind control, that's based off coercion and slavery. And I always like what how Larkin Rose once said is, you can call it anything you want, but you couldn't call it government, because it just had its roots, coercion and violence and duress.
Yeah, if
I
I
think
give you
what-
advice, I'm not governing you. I'm just I'm counseling or advising. It doesn't become government until it has the force behind it.
The coercion behind it, yeah.
And the
absolutely.
question seems to kind of come from people who try to put the onus on you to come up with an answer, but that's not necessary. If you're just pointing out a contradiction in someone's philosophy or their worldview, it doesn't mean that you also need to provide some total solution to that either. You can let the contradiction stand there. You don't need to have some alternative, solution for them to grasp onto. That's just what they're trying to, do in their mind.
Yeah, who
Very
would
well
pick the
said.
cotton?
I think that's really important to point out. Actually, I find that quite a bit when it comes to talking about these types of ambiguous topics like property, or let's say you're having you've delegated some of your jobs into a voluntary community to other people to take on these services, and then you're like, oh, I'm worried that this is going to be a slippery slope into a more coercive system, which it could be if we don't have the principles of natural law. So that's the key foundation to all of these things, right? And also, there cannot be any kind of coercive force being used. And again, that's why you have guns. Just saying. Whether you like it or not, that's why you have them.
I think Angela has
Exactly.
a follow-up in the chat here. She's saying we
Okay.
missed it. We missed it. Service to us. I think I could be misunderstanding, but it seems like she's stressing the fact that if it's actually a service to us, right? Not just changing the name, but where they're actually doing something. And if I'm understanding correctly, I'll just riff on this real quick, and I'd love to hear you guys' opinions as well. But the problem is the monopoly aspect of it. That's the one difference between government and the free market. Is the government is like, there's a department that does this, a department that does that. All the funding is, comes from the taxes. It goes directly to that to do that job. There is no competition for who gives the best service, right? So it's not the service that's the problem. It's the monopoly. If we had a free market, then that's where actually the good service would get delivered, because there's no our way is the only way and no one can do it better or worse. And when you're guaranteed that budget, all the incentive to do a good job has gone away, and all the incentive to bring in corruption is amplified. So that's where it gets really slippery slope.
You have more choice to, to choose who you want to provide those services instead of centralized force. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, you vote with your dollar, basically. It's like, oh, these guys do the best job. That's who I want to hire to do whatever service it may be, whether it's personal defense, like what we think the police do. There could be, free market protection type services if that's, but there'd probably be a lot more natural, like militia type stuff where that would be a lot more of a niche market instead of just like, oh, we're all just helpless slaves. Nobody has guns. We need the police on every corner just to make sure crimes don't happen. And, it would be a very different culture, coming back to the culture again, and just a very different mindset altogether, I think.
I agree. I think free markets are a big solution, especially when you're talking about the economy of freedom. But if you're just talking about the state of the absence of slavery, which does apply to the economy of freedom as well, I think that's where we fundamentally have to start. And this is the issue that we always run into when we're talking about concepts like this, is that it gets into utility, right? We're talking about utility with all these things. And we can deal with utility after we get principles down. Utility comes second to principles. And since people don't have principles down, then they don't really need to be dealing with the utility aspect, even though that they want those answers, right? They need to fundamentally grasp the principle part first, because until they get that, then the utility is always going to end up in
it's
disorder.
the who would build the roads argument all over again. It's just, that's not the question we need to answer. It's not. That's just almost like a red herring to the real discussion that's happening. And then it's almost a fear reaction of, well, how could we live our lives without this thing, in our lives? And again, it's not that we can't provide solutions, but yeah, the person, whoever, typically people jump to these who would build the road arguments because, they've just really not spent enough time thinking about the concepts. And, so you kind of have to be patient with those kinds of questions and try to walk them through that, maybe they really haven't seen the full picture of their presuppositions and worldview. And that's really what you're grappling with, not, who would replace this thing A for A or apples for apples. It's, it may not work like that. And, the way nature works, we may not know what that looks like exactly. We can sort of come up with concepts and envision it, but, it might be something that may not be able to think about on the fly as far as who would provide the service A, B, C, D, in a true free world.
Yeah, one thing I always like to think of is the mere fact that people are asking that shows it's like they're answering their own question. If you're worried about who would do this or that, it means that there's a need for it because someone else is concerned about it too. And that's the whole mindset of an entrepreneur or someone that thrives in a free market. Is they're always looking for, well, who would do this, who would do that, how can I go and solve a problem or meet a demand? So the fact that question is the standard thing that comes up shows that there's a demand for it, and there's going to be people that understand that, and they will find a way. And she's talking about infrastructure, Social Security, and all this funded with a spending only tax. But you could just as easily fund things through voluntary means. A tax, no matter how if you tax the income or you tax the sales or you tax whatever, the TV, it's all a tax. It's all coercion. It's all theft. Mm-hmm. That's the real crux of the whole entire thing. And so again, if there's a need for it, then people will, like, no one needs to tax you so that you can buy a cell phone because you want one or need one, and so you buy it willingly. No one has to force it on you. So these other things, and again, if there's a culture around like community as opposed to the very satanic, selfish mindset that we have a culture, very strong culture in now, of just like, I don't care about that. As long as I got what I need, then I'm good. But if there's a culture around contributing to, hey, we can the defense and take care of old people and stuff like that, there's no problem. It would get handled.
Yeah, it's this thought that, everything needs to be done on a large scale, right? Medi-Cal for all, for the whole nation, Social Security, defense for the whole nation. When everything would operate more on a local level. A method, when I run into people that ask a lot of these questions, right? They want to know, well, is this going to be a better system? Like, they're giving the system we have now validity, like it's okay, but is what you're talking about true freedom? Will it be better than what we have now? Which, I mean, shows kind of an ignorant perception of what's actually going on in reality right now, the system at large and the philosophical aspects. But a good method is to ask them what they would do in a situation like that. Like, well, who do you think would build the roads? How would you think we would take care of the elderly or, the handicapped in a community? And use that Socratic method and watch their wheels turn and see what kind of answers that they provide. And I think a lot of people would be surprised that, hey, guess what? Human beings are actually kind of smart, like we could figure some shit out together.
The bar is pretty low anyways, right?
I'd be curious, like asking, because I've heard people phrase questions like that. And the first thing I ask whenever I can is, what do you mean by better? Like, what constitutes better as opposed to worse? What is your criteria for judging this? Do you have a metric? Is it quality of service? Is it how moral the society is? Like, I'm pretty sure implicitly most people judge a society based on its technological progress, which if you do
efficiency,
that's okay. It's a consistent metric, but like, I don't give a fuck about that personally. It doesn't speak to how well the society actually runs. It doesn't speak to the moral quality of the people that form that society.
Exactly.
We build really good weapons though. So
yeah, that's why
I love weapons. I'm into it, but like, I don't think that it's better. I just think that it's almost like it's a very one-dimensional way to look at things. Oh, it's better or it's worse. Well, in what way?
Exactly. Exactly. It's very materialistic, right? Oh, we are an advanced civilization right now, but maybe 1,000 years ago they were primitive people, or a few thousand years ago they were primitive people when they probably had a closer connection to nature and how the laws of nature operated, right? I mean, we look at indigenous cultures even nowadays where mental illness is not a thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a thing. And even if it is, like they know how to deal with that. And it's usually on a communal group level.
Shamanic level.
Shamanic level. Exactly.
Yeah. When people say, how would this work or how would that work? There's a presupposition baked in that what we do now is working. And so it's built on a false premise right from the get-go.
Exactly. 100%.
What groups will be more open to natural law? I think
you're muted, Brandon, or something.
Yeah, you're muted, dude.
Nobody's hearing you.
Nope, not hearing him.
Nate, what do you think about that question?
Well, hopefully my mic doesn't mess everybody up. I would say, I don't know, maybe that's a great question. I don't know who the low-hanging fruit would be. I guess maybe, there's just so many groups. Who do you go after? Atheists? I don't know. It's a great question. I'm not sure.
I can answer that. Hold on, I got a little echo. I'll mute Nate. Sorry, you got it. a common factor that I've seen I can't say there's just one group of people, because I've had positive and negatives all across the board, from new age to, more conservative types. It doesn't really matter. I mean, there's just pros and cons with both. But the common factor that I've seen is actually people that are truly open-minded and actually have that desire to seek. I've seen this in all types of different groups of people, but that's a rare quality nowadays. Someone that's actually interested in seeking answers or diving deep in certain categories. Those are the people that actually I have kind of reached and have marinated on these topics, and they go back and forth with me. So that's the common factor that I see. It's actually true open-mindedness. Because a lot of people all across the board in these groups, doesn't matter if it's spiritual, political, atheist, whatever, they're very rigid and dogmatic, and they're just calcified in in their false axioms, in their belief systems. So I think a lot of people, if you did a poll, the majority of people would say, yeah, I'm open-minded, when they're absolutely not. So that's a common factor that I've seen.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I would say just in my my experiences that, I mean, I was obviously joking with the atheists because I feel like I haven't done very well with them. I feel like the more open-minded people tend to be Christians, because they're, they're closer to some kind of, higher power. They at least have some kind of belief system in, a deity, where they can, have that open mind. And if I don't cross the line on their beliefs, they tend to listen. And, they do start to see the parallels, and then they start to see the bullshit in their own, belief system. So it's hard to say, but I think that's probably, in my experience, that's who I've had a better, I don't know. Well, I don't know the right word, but those are the people that I think I've reached the most.
I think that for the atheist, you approach them with a free market economic strategy and more of a scientific empiricism, and then they will get on board with you. And then for the Christians, if you approach them through a more spiritual or moral aspect, they definitely are going to relate with you a lot more. And that tends to be in that dynamic between those two groups, how I've always approached either of them. And I think that atheists are very receptive to something like what Logan's talking about with free markets. And then also, I think, like I just said, like what you're talking about, Nate, more moral with that. I would like to roll back the question just for 1 second. Anybody who's really interested in like understanding some of the ways a society could work, I would highly recommend reading not only Larkin Rose, but Benjamin Tucker. He was a famous anarchist, early 19th century anarchist, and he really lays out how a lot of these systems, all these questions have already been answered by great authors and great literary writers. So Benjamin Tucker would be my main recommendation for like how a stateless society would be ran when it comes to that type of utility issue. So I just wanted to add that in there for anybody.
Excellent.
And I'm not muted, so I fixed that. I don't know how my mic got muted.
That time.
I have no idea, but I fixed it.
I was going to add on, Brandon, like what everyone's saying here. I think the key thing is to find the entry point for who you're talking to. Understand their mindset, put yourself in their shoes, and then find that entry point, whatever that may be. I definitely think I've had the most success with Christians because you can go for that. They already have the framework of God's law. And if you put it and you use those kind of language, that it doesn't trigger them and they can already kind of get behind, for example, my aunt is like this, very staunch Christian and kind of minarchist mindset, but I've been kind of working on her for years. And each time it's like, I can tell she's making progress and she's less resistant to the things that I say, and she's just like, nope, that's right, you're right, you know, on those kind of things. Say for like a new ager, for example, they already have like the law of attraction, for example. So then you're like, well, there's other spiritual laws than that, and kind of use that as an entry point. The trouble with them is they're very resistant to like truth, right? They're like, well, what do you mean by truth? Like your truth? Or it's like, no, the truth.
We have to be
Yeah, they're always-
versatile in our rhetoric. I think, Logan, you nailed it.
Yeah,
Like,
yes.
I mean, when you're going to engage with someone, like, you should ask them a few questions to sum them up, to gauge where they're coming from, what type of person they are, right? I mean, so your approach is going to be different with a more conservative leaning person, which would probably understand rights and natural rights easier than, you know, a far left liberal. So you have to have your arsenal in your rhetoric, and your communication skills should be vast. But hey, when you actually know the concepts of natural law, objective morality, natural rights, spirituality in general, when you know it, you can convey it in many different forms and fashions, right? Truth applies to any category. So I think it's good that, you know, we have that versatility.
Yeah, Will, you the words right out of my mouth, you know, because I've done some good talk, you know, with Christian. I always come at, you know, from a cause and effect, you know, way, or if I'm talking, you know, with a libertarian or a person who's more conservative, then I'll start with, you know, freedom and rights. So yeah, we do need to have many hell approaches, and you know, be willing to listen, and we have to put it in a way that's relatable toward them. And like Will said, we have to ask them questions, you know, and kind of get a feel from where they are at, and not just, you know, trying to approach, you know, everything from just a one shoe fits all.
That's the magic word you said, Brandon. Relatable. They have to be able to relate to what you're talking about, because if they can't actually apply it to their life or see the correlation, then, you know, I mean, just like I said in my presentation, we're dealing with children, psychological children. So you better be able to explain it, you know, to like a 10-year-old. So.
Well, we have another question on the screen. I think this is the last one that I could find, at least. I don't know if they brought up any other ones, but I don't know if someone wants to take this one off the board. I have an answer, but I'd like to hear what you guys want to say about this first. Anybody?
Well, I mean, I kind of answered it earlier in my presentation. It's at least one reason is we're in a imbalance. You know, our brains, the way that we are imbalanced with the whole world, the whole earth brain, you know, our brains are mostly in a northern hemisphere where, you know, the northern hemisphere is dealing with the masculine. And so because we're so centralized in that part, and you know, everything around us is all solar, which is masculine energy, you know, it has made us reject the sacred feminine. It has made us reject everything that is feminine, and that's not completely the case, but, you know, to enough of a degree that we have really become very destructive towards the feminine because of that imbalance. And I'm not just talking about males. I'm talking about females and males who have this imbalance. We all have it. And, you know, once we, you know, really do the work to be able to, you know, glare at that enough, we can really see it and you know, start to reorient ourselves to where we're not, you know, where we become more centered and more balanced, and you know, start to understand that the feminine is so much more beautiful and magical and much needed in this world, because we're living in a ego driven world. We're very divided, we're very imbalanced, and I mean that, but again, that's just one aspect of it. There's so much that goes into that. I mean, it's just thousands and thousands of years of this type of mind control, essentially, and domination from that part of the mind. So it runs very deep. So it's a big subject.
I would actually I'll lead this person to checking out Michael Tsarian's work. He's got a huge series that's fairly recent about the female Illuminati, talking about the hidden matriarchy, because I mean, even though it may seem like that, and yes, women have been mistreated, I think it's just people have been mistreated across the board. It's definitely an imbalance, but men, they follow women very easily. So when you have, and you look in the past, you have a king, he's usually highly influenced by a woman behind the scenes. I mean, even in the ancient cultures, right, the seers were the women, or most of the time, right? They were the wisdom holders that would actually direct a whole tribe and village as well. So I think there might be some nuances there, and I think there's kind of an exoteric and an esoteric categories that could be dived into. But Michael Tsarian's got some really good work on that I would highly recommend checking out.
Yeah, his series on the dark aspects of the female Illuminati is amazing. It's really, really freaking good. I like what Nate brought to the table about this, with a consciousness imbalance that we have going on, which then we manifest into a physical form. I think that's part of the issue. But I also see that a lot of society does bolster to the female. It just depends on what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean specifically when you mean mistreated? Because there's a lot of aspects where they are held to be very, very high in regard. And a lot of the things that we do, especially in the Western culture, is to put them up. And yes, men do dominate the, let's say the business capital. And it's specifically because of their psychology, really. It's not really necessarily an equality that's going on. It's mainly just because of how those types of systems run and operate naturally. And I think that would, I think a lot of females could benefit from understanding the psychological aspects of being in those types of business environments, obviously. But if you look around the whole world, even currently, let's say you go to Japan or you go to some other countries, the female is held to be the highest esteem, and they have rites and rituals that they still perform even within the state apparatus. But I also could say at another level that the state is part of the issue of why females have been mistreated. And that also has to do with that solar cult domination in our consciousness. So I think that females could be or would have been less mistreated if the state was not involved, or the monarch, or the church, because we see what the church does to females as well. So it's not just the state, it's just religious dogma. It's the belief in authority. But yeah, it's very nuanced when you're talking about like mistreated, because all of us have been mistreated. Men are the most likely to go to war and die in war. Men take up the hardest and most dangerous jobs. Men do all the sanitation work in most of the business environments. Like, there's a lot of things. Men are the most likely to commit suicide. Men are the ones who are more poor, and they end up on the streets more than females. So, like, when you say mistreated, we have to ask questions about that, because men are very abused as well. It's just that a specific group of men happen to not be that way, whereas the rest of us are mistreated just as much as the females. So
I have some to share here from my perspective with polarity. I think that this can definitely apply here. when you understand, first you have to look at the cosmic principles, and then, as above, so below. So gender is not a human construct. That is just propaganda garbage. These are universal principles that have objectively knowable characteristics. And when we are truly embodied and in touch with our instincts, we naturally exhibit these characteristics. And so it's just energetics think of like a magnet or a battery. It's the flow of energy. And so the masculine projects and the feminine receives. The masculine leads, the feminine follows. And it's not about superiority. It's not about hierarchy. It's the man leads, but in service to her. And so the feminine must be heard, and there must be that actual divine connection happening. And that is where this ties into this question. It's the toxic masculinity version of the male in authority without being connected to his heart and not connected to the feminine's feelings and not respecting that. It's a selfish leadership. It's about domination and control, not about service. And that's a very key distinction there. And that is baked into our culture very much. There's a huge gender and identity crisis happening right now.
That's why you can reduce every problem in the world. You can reduce it down to morality. Because there's nothing more basic than that we incarnate in a body and we interact with others. What is the status of that interaction? Does it initiate harm or does it not? There's morality right there, knowing the difference of that. So
what's
the
interesting
question
about that is, sorry.
Just real quick, I'll just make one comment that the question itself, and I know Nathan said, hey, he knows that it's very complicated in many facets, but so maybe not coming at it from one angle, but, mistreated, abused, as in the right not to vote, and now you're a citizen, which is really just a slave. And it, so it's coming from this worldview of like, there's this patriarchy and that's just the way that it is. But, becoming, having the right to vote, for an example, isn't, now we say, oh, now it's equal. Well, now you're just equal under slavery. So, it is very nuanced and multifaceted. You can't just presuppose that it's a patriarchy. That's almost been a prescribed worldview, and it tries to simplify the matter. It's not that simple.
Yeah, I mean, the government itself is energetically a patriarchy because it's control. It's executive power. It's dictating. It's setting boundaries. The problem is, and even if you put all women into power as politicians and lawmakers, it would still be that. It would, you know what I'm saying, energetically. And so this is what I meant by the difference between the roles is when the masculine is leading, but with care. The government doesn't do that. The government is just like, this is how it is. I don't care what you think or feel about it. You just follow orders and obey, or else I'll abuse you. That is the toxic masculine in a nutshell right there. So that's the key distinction is and there's a question here about what I mean by men leading. Is the male leadership means he's in the position of control, and that's a little bit touchy for people. It's like, that sounds controlling, it's that narcissistic, right? But it's like it's, when I say it's an act of service, it's because it's unencumbering the feminine from that role. When she's encumbered with this burden of responsibility of leadership, that takes her out of her feminine essence, out of her radiance. The feminine wants to relax and just trust that everything's handled, that she's got masculine men around that are keeping her safe, keeping her provided for, cherishing and honoring her. That is the difference. She cannot do that when she's worried about, bills or laws or
or
like
that
any of the logistical
holding
stuff.
A job is better than raising children somehow, like this value system like Dylan talked about earlier. Well, what is it that's better? here. So working a job and paying your taxes is more honorable than raising children. And then if you're raising children and you're at home, that's being suppressed somehow. It's flipping things upside down where, maybe all men, like Brandon said, are actually trying to hold you up and put women up on a pedestal. And, we'll go be in the coal mines and the trenches so that we can make sure that the mother of our children has what she needs and can do her job. And versus somehow, like you said, Logan, the crisis is that somehow being at work and being able to vote is better.
Empowered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's empowering.
It
We
is a
have
great irony.
neo-feminism running around.
Rosie
amok
Riveter.
here.
Yeah.
The idea that women being tax donkeys has somehow caused them to be more free or liberated today than they were
Right.
previously.
Oh my God. Or the idea that you have the right to vote, right? The
Yeah.
right to vote for slavery. It's like, okay, come on. Like, that's ridiculous, obviously.
Yeah. False
So-
dialectic.
Yes, it's a false dialectic indeed. So do you guys have any other topics you'd like to bring to the table? I know it's getting pretty late here. It's almost 2:30 in the morning. Looks like some people are getting pretty tired. I know I'm pretty exhausted after hosting for what was it? Over 30 hours, definitely. Maybe like 33 hours, something like that. 32 hours.
That's savage, man. You did like solo hosting that for 2 days
That's my
of the
new
conference.
nickname, Savage, bro. I got it. All right. I'm gonna engrave that on my guns. One more topic. Let's bring up one more topic. How about this? What do you guys think about getting more people to do events like this, and how do you see that as being effective towards spreading this knowledge?
I think it's a great idea because you see the unity, you see the camaraderie, the chat. You get to showcase a lot more art. That's one thing that Will talks about is instead of calling myself a content creator, I'm gonna start calling myself a artist. And I use all of my software and my hardware, as my canvas. So yeah, I think it's a good idea, and there's a lot more people who seem to be interested in putting their art, out there, and it also gets to showcase, helpers art, and we get to connect. Just meet people. I was able to, finally meet Tyler, Nate, Ellen. So we get to showcase our art, and we get to meet some, help wonderful individuals. Then it also gives a opportunity to inspire more people to get involved. So I think this is a wonderful idea.
Somebody else want to chime in on any of that?
I totally agree. I mean, there's a convergence that goes on of just energy. Number one, the presenters that come and bring that whole aspect of the message of truth and freedom to the table, but then the viewership that come together and they get introduced to other like-minded individuals when they see people in the chat and they see the presenters and they resonate with the message. So it's just amplifying this this magnetism and electricity of the message, and that's good for people to experience and see, because we see people that they might be in a bad place, like they're the only one, or we're not reaching people when we are. So when we do a conference like this, it's proving that, it's like uniting the clans and uniting the energy and the force. It's very good to see. I think, Brandon, you would agree, these conferences are for inspiration of the viewers, right? I mean, the presenters are making content. This is for the viewers to inspire you guys to take action, to go deeper and create something. So, I mean, just as the SEED4 conference was the inspiration for the funnel conference, right? And then the funnel conference was the inspiration for Shattering the Illusion conference. You see the trend? Like, let's keep this going. And, let's double down and, I mean, make it as big as we can and keep it going. More conferences. We're immortalizing a message by getting together and do 30 hours of just straight truth bombs and putting it on the internet so people can, check it out later. I mean, this is why knowing the tech, this is why Mark's message today in his presentation is so important and powerful. Like, we have to understand the tech to imprint that message out into the ether.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth with Mark's presentation. I was about to say that, you know, he nailed it. Obviously, you know, we need more people with more tech skills putting this information. This is the new way of publishing, is doing it online or doing it in person. You still have to have graphic design skills. You still have to have organization skills. You still have to have a lot of these skills that can be taught all over the place, especially just on the internet. And like he said, and like I've always said, you know, you have to be autodidactic. You have to have a drive, a willpower, or a fire, and, you know, the fire within, and you have to go and take the initiative to actually want to do these things. And we do need to see a lot more people putting in the effort. And, you know, if anybody out there who's watching this ends up putting a conference together, email one of us. You know, you never know. We may be free. We may be available to contribute in some way. And we do have some knowledge and some skills with this and some experience with these things, or we can point you and get you connected to other people. You know, reach out. We're here for you. That's also something I wanted to tell people, is that we're here for you. We're all in this together, you know, and we better start connecting with each other, because you never know. The boot may come down really, really fast and hard, and we may need to form some kind of like private communication network so that we can actually, you know, have some strategy. You know, we need some fucking strategy. And that's something that I don't see enough of, is there's no strategy being put forward when it comes to, let's say, more contingencies for just in case things get kind of hot. Obviously, not in a sexy way.
It might be sexy. You don't know.
It could be sexy. Maybe it will be. I mean, if you're doing burpees over there, somebody's going to be like, oh, man.
Basking in his red light.
My kid doesn't have pants. I've got knee pads, and I just wear Ranger panties. It's kind of sexy, maybe.
Oh, my gosh.
That's
that
hella
was
funny.
not the image I needed to put in my mind before I go to sleep.
Sleep well, Brandon.
Oh, my God.
It's great to see so many people in the chat. You know, I mean, we've seen this on the funnel conference as well. There's no drama. And I don't know if that's like, we're just like lucky, or if people actually understand morality and, you know, ethical principles. So people are, you know, they respect each other, but they're still open-minded. You know, no one has a problem with, you know, asking questions or seeking truth or clarification, but there's like no drama. There's no fucking trolls or nothing like that. Like, it's great to see. I think, you know, morality and truth is the foundation of a relationship. So
Absolutely.
total success, Brandon and Tyler. Well done, guys.
It'll be
Well,
interesting to see
go ahead, Logan.
When things start to get a little bit bigger. That's when I think you could run into a little bit more, like, attracts more haters and people coming in, and, you know, that's when we'll know when we're really getting somewhere, I think. But I mean, bring it on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, bring it to the table.
I think we're doing great. These things get bigger and better quality wise, and, you know, outreach wise every year. So we're clearly making progress, and that's what matters.
Absolutely. I think I got over 200 subs just in the past 2 days, which is a pretty big increase just in 2 days. You know, so that's pretty nice, and I'm sure it will continue to rise for the next couple of weeks because of these content videos. Now, you guys will be releasing your videos on your own channels, right?
Already did.
Yeah.
Already did. Nice. Awesome. So yeah, I will try to link everything into the description for everybody's videos as well. I also will be releasing your guys' videos, but I'm gonna space them out, you know, probably over the next few weeks. So it's not just like all at once. We're gonna release the full days, and then I'm gonna do it, you know, and put it in the seed, you know, playlists or whatever, just so everybody has access to that. And I'll make sure to get all your guys' info in there. And I really appreciate everything that you guys have brought to the table. Without you guys, we couldn't have got it done, especially Tyler up here. Like I said, the engine behind the machine here. You know, look at him. It looks like he's like fused himself to that seat now. He's become one with it.
It's a little bit like when you go to Vegas and you're just overstimulated. And that's not just from the computer stuff, but just all the information that you guys packed into this. So Brandon, I want to say thank you. And I've, seen you online getting these wheels turning for probably about 8 to 9 years now. And seeing you continue on is inspiring. I do, hope that you will do a SEED6. And SEED4 kind of got me going with wanting to do better at this role. So I appreciate you for inviting me, and also just doing the organization of putting this together, because it's not easy. And there's no reason why there are reasons, but you don't have to do it. Basically, none of us had to do this or be here or make these presentations, but I think it does make a big difference when we do. So we don't know who we're going to inspire with this content. And, we talked about earlier meeting people where they're at. But, to the point of Mark's presentation, when you do this one-to-many format, so we don't even know some of the people we could be reaching with this information. So cheers to all the content creators. You guys all did an amazing job. And the people that stuck with us throughout the stream, that makes a big difference too. I saw a pretty consistent number the whole time. So in my mind, that meant that the people that were engaged wanted to stay engaged. And so that's all very inspiring. So thank you.
Yeah. And thanks to everyone that stuck around so late, to hang out with us and ask us good questions and all of that. Y'all are the real OGs.
For sure. Nathan, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you so much, Tyler. Yeah, man, you really killed it. And you did it the last conference too. And you just really ran everything so smooth. And Brandon, so much props to you. And your presentation was just, all of your guys' presentations were so good. So inspiring. Every presentation that I saw today, I'm like, man, I got to go back and do the research on that. And I feel like I got something out of every single presentation today and yesterday, and that's amazing. It's an amazing feeling to see that everything just keeps getting better and better. These conferences keep running smoother. They keep amplifying higher. The roundtable is getting stronger and stronger, because that's what these conferences are. They are roundtables. And, we're sharpening ourselves, and we should be proud of that. And we should, be thankful that we keep this table rolling, and I think it's just amazing to be part of this. And, I'm definitely going to sleep well tonight. And, I really wish Doug could have made it to the roundtable. But I know he's just really trying to recover and feel a little better. And I'm thankful that he was able to put together such an amazing presentation. His vitriol was just out of this world. It was such a home run. And I really, really appreciated that I actually watched the whole thing last night. And, yeah, you guys are all awesome. And I'm so thankful for all of you guys, so appreciate it.
Getting the love from the teddy bear over here. Cubby hole, bring the bear.
Yeah, likewise, Nate. Appreciate that.
Awesome, guys. Well, I think I'm going to call it. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the roundtable tonight. I know it was a late one. It's 16, almost 17 hours now. We've almost made it to, geez, that's a lot, man. That is a lot. 17 hours. Dude.
Am I gonna have to do a 3-day funnel conference? Are we pushing each other?
Yeah, we're pushing each other now.
Woo!
Oh man. Just so you guys know, I will be putting on a Seed 6 and a Seed 7. I'm looking forward to hopefully doing Seed 7 in person somewhere. That I'm going to keep that secret a little bit. I've been working on that kind of behind the scenes a little bit here and there. But SEED6 will definitely be online again, and I'm hoping to get that done probably after next year's funnel conference, so we can work together on organizing that. If you want to, Will, we can figure that out. And I know you're going to be putting that out there, which will be awesome. So check out the funnel conference if anybody hasn't checked that out. That's an amazing conference. We have a few, I think we all spoke here besides Dylan and Tyler. So we all spoke at that conference. So that's amazing, how we're cooperating with this. But thank you guys so much. I hope you get some fucking good sleep. I know I'm going to need it. I'm going to sleep like a bear tonight. My dogs are calling me.
Sleep like an owl.
Come to bed.
Call back to 16 hours ago.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, reach out to me if you guys need anything from me at any point, and I'm sure we'll be talking to each other very soon. I hope you guys have a wonderful, good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Much love.
Night, everyone.
Appreciate it.